Hiya, how you doing? We're about to start shape 5 now, which means we're officially halfway through the sculpting series already. And this shape is actually easier than the last, which is nice. And what we're going to learn is how to block out the shoulders and boobies using primitives. Then we're going to work on the inner ear, and that's all. No worries. So let's have a look at that. So again, let's change our reference meshes before we do anything. And you're going to notice we've got a couple of new shapes here. So we have the shoulders, we have the boobies, and yes, I did just say boobies. I am childish, and I'm not going to spend the next 10 or so minutes calling them breasts, because they're not breasts, they're boobies, okay? And we have the shape here inside the inner ear to do, which is dead easy, doesn't take 2 minutes. So the shoulders then. We're going to move nice and quick with this, okay? I'm going to press 1 for a front view. I'm going to make sure I'm in object mode, which I am. Then I'm going to press Shift A, add a cube. Now with the cube selected, I'll press Control 1 to add a subdivision surface, and I will apply that. And then just move that into sort of roughly where the shoulder's going to go. I'll scale that down so it's about 6 squares tall. Looking at the grid, now the grid is at 2 subdivisions. And we want it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's only 5. Let's scale that up a little bit. So it's 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Okay, then I'm going to jump into sculpt mode. Make my brush a little bit bigger. And then just squash down the top like that. I'm going to come into a side view. And I want to move it so that it's over the armpit area. And we don't actually have to jump out of sculpt mode to move. I mean, I could just make my grab brush like huge and move it like that, but if I scroll down here, and by the way, if you click in your middle mouse button, you can actually drag this up and down. You can do that with the menus at the top as well, which is good to know. I'll just select move here, and we can just move that into position. Nice and easy, no problem. So then what I want to do is just get my grab brush and just shape it into sort of the shape we can see over here with our reference mesh. And I'll keep it really low poly as it is. I'm actually going to add a subdivision surface soon. So do err on the side of being a bit bigger than what it should be, because once we add that subdivision surface, it will shrink. But it's fine. It's such a simple shape that it won't take any time at all to just reshape it to how it's supposed to be. When we get round to adding a clavicle, the clavicle is going to start here, sort of just off center of the neck, and then sort of curve round right into the middle of this shoulder. Something like that. Just make sure it covers the armpit. It's looking all right. So as I say, I'll add a subdivision modifier and then just apply that. So you can't apply multi-res modifiers in sculpt mode. So I could just jump into object mode and apply it, but instead I'll undo that and just add a subdivision surface and apply that instead. And then, as I said, it's shrunk a little bit. So let's just address that. Don't forget you can use the grid to help you find these shapes, and it might be easier to bring these subdivisions back down. Do it with them all. Just sort of gauge from the grid what you need to change. Oops. So I'm just going to jump into a back view here by pressing Control 1 on the numpad. I'll do the same here. Don't forget to check the side view as well. And it's quite a simple shape really. Try not to overthink it. So then I'll jump back into object mode. I might even add another subdivision surface just to make that a bit smoother. Apply that. So let's add a mirror modifier. It mirrors against itself, but what you can actually do, you don't have to apply all transforms like we did earlier in this series. I mean, it is a good idea to keep your meshes clean, but what you could also do is set the object from which you want to use to mirror these things over. Did that make sense? I think it made sense. You'll know what I mean when I add a mirror object now. So I'm going to press the eyedropper and I'm going to set this torso as the mirror object. So what it's going to do, it's going to use that to mirror it over to the other side. Okay, that's fine. But now the origin is in a really random spot. So I've got a couple of choices here. Before I do anything, let's just apply that mirror. Now I could either apply all transforms like we did earlier, or I could come up to object, set origin, origin to geometry, and then it'll go straight into the middle of it like that, rather than at the origin, which is what would happen if we applied transforms. Okay, so let's just jump into sculpt mode, turn on symmetry, just check that all works. Nice. Right, so let's move on to the boobies. I'm still not sorry. Right, so I'll get into object mode and I will add a cube. Press Ctrl 3 and then apply that modifier. I'm going to scale it by 0.45. Your mileage may vary. And then I'll sort of move it into position, make sure it's below the shoulders. So you want it below the shoulders, and then we'll bring it to the front. I'm just sort of looking at the reference as I do that. Right, and then I'll come back to my front view. I'm going to press the forward slash to go into local mode, and I just want to make sure that this doesn't pass the center line, because if it does, when we come to mirror it, it'll get a bit funky. So we just want to make sure it's on this side of the center line, which it is, so that's fine. So I will add a mirror modifier. And it doesn't look like it's done anything, and that's because the origin point of this object is right in the center, so it is working. It just looks like it isn't because it's just mirrored onto itself. So again, we can set this mirror object. It doesn't even have to be the torso, it could be the neck, because that's right in the center as well, and it'll just behave as we want it to. And then I will apply that. In fact, no, I won't apply that yet. I'll apply that in a minute. What I'm going to do first is come underneath here. Now, the thing with boobies is, right, they don't actually point straight forward like how we have them now. They kind of point at more of a 45-degree angle. So I'll press Ctrl 7 to go straight underneath, and then I'll press rotate 45 like that. Works for me. And then I can apply that mirror modifier. And I will also set the origin to geometry. Jump into sculpt mode, turn on symmetry, just check that. Oh, hang on a minute. Let's apply the transforms. Apply all transforms. Then jump into sculpt mode. And symmetry is working how we want it to. So now we have these turned out, we can look at our topology. I'll just turn on the wireframe so you can see the topology better. And we can use that to push this towards. We want to create a sort of, we don't want it going straight up like that. We want to create a sort of upside down heart. If you've ever studied drawing, sometimes they teach to an upside down heart shape like this. So we're going to use our topology to guide us towards creating that. It can be a little bit tricky because we are right at the center line. Don't overthink it. All this can be tweaked later on once we join all these objects together and remesh them. I'm happy with that, how that's looking. Let's check a 3/4 view. Let's bring that up a little bit. Okay. Nice. Sorted. We're done with that. Now let's move on to those ears, shall we? I'll just turn wireframe back off. And this bit's dead easy. No need to worry about this. So object mode, select the ears, sculpt mode. Then I'm going to select the mask brush. There it is. I'll add that to my quick favourite so I'm not searching for it again. That ear looks like it's floating a little bit. Let's just adjust that, shall we? Okay, that looks a little bit better. Okay, so mask brush. We just want to mask an anti-helix type shape. Remember, this is stylized, so it doesn't have to be crazy detailed or anything. Something like this. Let's look at our reference. So you'll notice that it kind of starts off quite deep here and then gets gradually shallower and shallower until it sort of merges with the lobe of the ear like this. So something to bear in mind in a moment once we start moving this. Alright, so once you're masked out, Control I to invert that mask. I'll just make sure it's clean. Okay, seems alright. So I'll press G for my grab brush. Make it really big. And again, holding Control, we can just drag that straight out. I want to push it further down over here. compared to over here where it's kind of level. When we remesh it in a moment, it'll look a little bit better. We don't want to remesh it yet because it'll make making this shape more difficult. And then notice this transition here. We can use our scrape brush to create that. Okay, something like this. Okay, so I think we can remesh this now. Well, let's make sure we've got it right from all angles. Let's not forget that. So something like that. Okay, so Alt-M clears that mask. And then I will remesh. Let's just see what it's like, where it is. Looks a little bit low. Let's add a little bit of resolution. I'll make this maybe 0.0042 remesh. That might be a little bit high, to be honest. Let's turn that down a little bit. It's a bit high. And again, I'm going to have a go at that mesh filter. I don't know why I've introduced it into the tutorial, because before today I'd never even used it. But it seems to behave similar to something that we've had in ZBrush for a while. And yeah, that looks kind of nice. Oh, I don't know what happened here. If I get clay strips, just build that back up. Does that affect that? It does indeed. So what we need to do then is turn on front faces only, and that's our back face masking. Okay, that solves it. Okay, so it's not exactly what we've got over there in the reference. We could tweak the shape a little bit, make it a little bit better. I think it's close enough. Just grab my scrape brush and plane this off a little bit. Oh, it's a bit heavy. And then we have the inside of our ear. And that's it. I told you it was easier than the last one. Now, as with the previous exercises, I'd recommend going over them a few times until you're comfortable with them. And I'll see you for shape 6.